you write it off as like, okay, that's test fluid, it's part of the game, I have to see it through. And after a couple of years of doing that, and I would do my blood work every month or every 3 months, I check my C-reactive protein levels because I know that's important for inflammation and preventing cardiovascular disease later down the line. And my CRP levels would always be elevated on cycle and then come down. And first I thought maybe it's training intensity. So you go into the literature, you can't really find any conclusive evidence that, hypertrophy workouts or strenuous workout raises CRP levels that much. I'm talking about high sensitivity CRP levels of 5, 10, 12, 15. I've seen it up as high as 50.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Muscle Minds with Scott Stevenson, and we are joined by the one and only Vigorous Steve today. Guys, all of our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. You can use our code THINK for some additional savings on high-quality, third-party tested health and performance supplements. And if you are in Canada, check out supplementsource.ca. You can get a lot of good deals over there. I'm excited for this. We have the meeting of the minds, and before the show, we realized we have Steve, we have Scott Stevenson, and Scott. So there's we're going to get each other's names wrong here at some point or another today. I'm sure of that, but we're going to do our best. Yes. Steve, thank you for hanging out with us, man. This is going to be a blast.
Anytime. It's always a blast to join you guys, and it's my greatest honor to be in your presence. The two Scots of the Think Big Bodybuilding Media Channel. Yes.
Dude,
I've been waiting for this for a long time. Long time.
I'd wanted to say thank you, by the way. You had some really nice feedback that you shared about our programming with your audience. You had said nice things about Scott in our show. So we're not as big as your show is. And we appreciate the push along. That's awesome. Really, thank you.
So that's the funny thing is because before I started my YouTube channel, I was following you guys, right? Muscle Mind, since it was on the Advices Radio website.
Yes.
So there was no YouTube channel.
What you're saying is that you grew many times faster than we have. You're late to the game and you're already bigger than us. I get it. That's how we're going to roll today.
No. That's not about. I got a huge push. I got a huge push from Derek, right? From Derek, More Plates, More Dates, because he kind of took me under his wing. So he told me about it. You have to manage your YouTube like this and do your thumbnails and make the titles a little bit clicky, not descriptive titles, but thought-provoking and interesting titles. But in reality, I've been a bodybuilding fan for over 20 years, and this show is part of that. So this is always like a check mark for me. Like, how long is it going to take before I'm on Think Big? So now I finally made it. Yes.
Now you're successful.
Yeah, now I'm finally successful. Yeah, I think a lot of bodybuilders see it. No, but a lot of bodybuilders see it like that because we watch you guys and we go to the Mountain Dog website or we purchase How to Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach ebook, right? And then at one point you get to talk to people who are on that level, and then you're like, oh, finally, I've landed in the bodybuilding space. So for me, it was always trying to get on this show. And the weird thing is when I go on Bio Bros, it's so relaxed, with Derek and Leo, and then this makes me a little bit nervous, to be honest. I'll do my best.
No, it's all good, man. You put out really good stuff. I mean, I think Scott first. Well, I was aware of you. Who knows how? Like it all kind of blurs together. I was aware of you, and then Scott mentioned that maybe you'd mention us once. But I didn't see it because I don't do the best job probably of tracking down all the mentions, but. I mean, it's you're doing great stuff, man. You really are. I'm really happy that you're on here because some of your messages. I mean, there's also all the cross-platform sharing of information is important.
Yeah,
and you're mixing things together kind of in the way that I have tried to at least. Is you got the bro aspect. You're in the trenches. You've been doing this for a while, and then science has something to say as well about all of this. So you're mixing things together in a way that's very, very important, I think.
We have to, because the scientific evidence is based on particular medical situations. Now you've published a couple studies yourself that are really aimed towards bodybuilders, but they're spaced so far and few between. So we kind of have to decipher, and we're still trying to piece everything together. And I think the more people who are on YouTube doing that, the better. And I always felt that, with bodybuilders, people they're always a little bit hesitant to really release all their own personal information, what they do with their cycle, the dosages, the health screening that's needed, or they don't do the health screening. So I just wanted to create a one-stop shop where everything is talked about, including the weird stuff. And yeah, I don't mind, shying back, because bodybuilding is very obscure, at certain things. And but it's also very interesting, and trying to piece it together is one of my passions. Absolutely. So I always got inspired by you. Every time I watch Muscle Minds, I have to pause and go to PubMed and then do reading, and then take notes, and then come back. Yeah, but that's how we learn, right? Because
absolutely.
Years ago, you talked about the sexual hormone binding globulin receptor complex, and I was like, but what about proviron, like so many others?
Yeah.
So I went to PubMed, I started researching, and then I came back to finish the rest of the podcast, an hour or two later. And ever since then, I've been trying to, learn more and tell people, said, SHBG is not the devil. You can actually get some anabolism out of it, if you keep it somewhat elevated, because, the cyclic adenosine monophosphate concentrations in the skeletal muscle also help with androgen receptor activation. So it's always eye-opening listening to you too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. There's lots of, so the rabbit holes are endless. That's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And really, like, I've been doing this for a while. So, right on. I'm reading the Brian Shaw. Good morning.
I can't bring comments up while Scott's talking, because it totally sidelines him.
Like a hand, being raised in the audience. Oh, there's a question. I got to stop.
Right.
That's an old habit from teaching. But literally, I have found that when something's brought up on a discussion board, or anywhere along the line, I'm talking with someone in the gym or what have you, I can dig and dig and dig, and eventually I will find some sort of a related rabbit hole that gives some information that will sort of shine a light of information on whatever that topic is. It's there in the literature. So, like, the SHBG thing and megalin, which I think we might get into. I'm sure that was one of the topics we're going to think about talking today. There's something there, and I always try to suggest, if you can read, and English is your native tongue, you've got the ability to decipher a substantial amount of that. And Steve, I don't know what you're obviously a very, very bright guy, so that helps too. And curiosity, I think, is always number one, and that I think you've got in spades. Yeah. But if there's a desire to dig in on the information, you can literally be sort of a self-taught, I don't want to use the term negatively, bro scientist, but you can gather a lot of information that will help you guide your decisions. If you're willing to read past the abstracts and just what's said there, because that's kind of the issue, is that there's the abstracts, or they just kind of, it's like the front door. It's like, oh, that house looks great from the outside. What's really going on indoors? You got to open in, walk around. Is it a front? And that actually happens sometimes. But
I think with a lot of studies, a lot of people, they read the abstracts, but they don't really dive in. So sometimes the studies are only published as the abstract, but you can actually go to Science Hub and type in the DOI code and get the entire paper. And then if you really read through the paper, you know how to decipher the methods of analysis and how the study was performed. Then you realize some of these results or the discussion is not really applicable to what we're doing, but you can only take a little segment out of it that's not mentioned in the abstract. So, and then of course you have to use, a little bit of basic human biology, which a lot of people nowadays don't really seem to be interested in, which is a shame. So if you piece together the studies and the biology and then the pharmacology of the drugs that we're all using, or most of us, then slowly but surely everything starts to fall into place. Yeah. And but it's good to see everything is still evolving in our community. You bring new things to the forefront, and I try to educate things that I've learned. And it's a little bit of bro science here and there, but you have to extrapolate a little bit from the evidence to fill in the gaps. It's not complete. Yeah. I feel
even and Brad Schoenfeld gets sort of pushed in this direction. For instance, talking about the high volume studies that he's done, and he said repeatedly, and I've reiterated, even the studies that are pretty much as directly applicable to bodybuilding, the training studies where you're looking at muscle growth, those are still just pointers.
Yeah.
Those are still aren't like, this is okay. You need to do exactly 28 sets for your legs in order to get the optimal amount of growth. Biological interindividuality rules the roost, especially in bodybuilding. And it's almost like, I'd almost go so far as to say, as humans, we have this nearly addictive like intellectual tendency to want to put things in boxes and say it's either this or that, black or white.
Absolutely.
There's no gray zone, because it can release us from cognitive dissonance of like, I experience this, but I read this and I can't put these two ideas together. It doesn't make sense to me, but it actually can be. And this is, I have one of my favorite talks to give is entitled "Why You Don't Look Like a Pro," and then the sort of subtitle is, you probably heard me mention, is and why you're not running in the Olympics, why you're not a world-class pianist, why you're not a engineer for NASA, et cetera. So there's all these things that are biologically, genetically determined in large part, at least 50% on average. You find that that's somewhere where it lands. And no one would say, you know what? If I just train hard enough, I can run faster than Usain Bolt, because people recognize that there's a genetic component, and probably something that happened, where he grew up as well, probably contributed as he's developing. But as bodybuilders, it's like, if I just take enough gear, I'm going to look like Ronnie Coleman. And, as much as that's repeated, I've heard that for decades now. Yeah. And then I've heard it shit on for decades now, but it's still something that, it bears repeating, because it's still a mindset. You don't really know until you've kind of gone that far, and not that we're suggesting that you try to do that. Try to mimic whatever drug. One of my favorite video types is when people say, this is what this person's taking from how they look. I don't know if those are big anymore.
I get some of that myself also.
He's on this. I can tell that, no, it's 600 Primo and he's on 15 milligrams of Dianabol. It's very specific how they can somehow judge from your look.
It's crazy, that's our community, though. It's usually not the people that are actually in the community. They're a lot outside looking in. They're not part of the, they haven't been backstage. They haven't coached athletes. And because when you coach athletes, you realize that it's spaced so far between the dosages. And that's why bodybuilding is so much fun, because there's a lot of information out there. You just have to make it your own. And then you're a bodybuilder. And then you have to persevere through it for 20 years, 30 years, which is, I think, where a lot of people also kind of fail. Like, I took a year off here to travel, and then you take another 6 months off to do, some health things that you need to resolve, or you go do other things, right? You're too busy to train. And I think with the consistency over decades, that's where a lot of people get successful, even if they, they might not know so much, or they do things totally wrong, actually, but the consistency eventually pays off. And it's also the inability to do consistency where a lot of bodybuilders fail, myself included, because I've taken lengthy periods off here and there, and then you just slowly get back down to baseline. Like right now, I'm slowly going back down to baseline, and then I need to pick up the consistency again, and then I start to look like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So,
did you find that you didn't have a strong muscle memory effect? You didn't when you took that year off?
Oh yeah, I got huge. It comes back super fast. But if you take a year off, that's a year of no progress, and then you need 4 months, 6 months maybe, depending on your level of development, to really get back to where you were. So now I'm taking 3 months kind of a rest, kind of detoxify, and it's too hot in Thailand anyway. And I'll know that I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back in 2 months, but hovering around 230 pounds is okay for me. Don't need to be 250, 260 anymore.
All right, guys, listen.
How old are you, Steve?
I'm going to jump in here because we've got a bunch of stuff.
38 years old. Yeah.
How tall, though? I was wondering.
Tall. 5'9". Sorry.
Okay, that's big, dude. All right, right on. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Steve's a big dude. There's no question about it. All right, though. I wanted to get into our topics though before the show ended. We should talk we should talk our stuff because we had some good stuff here, and it was great because Steve, being the YouTuber he is, I was like, hey, you got any ideas that you'd like to talk about? And he gives me this list of like 30 things. All great topics, though he doesn't understand that with Scott, that would be like the next 25 episodes right there if we did all of them. But there was one I really wanted to get to because this is something that Scott and I had talked about before, like at the 100th episode anniversary of Muscle Minds. If you guys hadn't seen that stuff, I should put a card in here. Go back and watch that stuff because we covered everything from one on drugs, one on training, and one on nutrition, and they all go really deep. They kind of summed up like the previous 99 episodes, but a topic that came up again recently made me realize that some of our newer listeners might not have watched those episodes. And Steve's idea was a discussion on carrier oils, which cause systemic inflammation and how the dynamic viscosity rating and injection site affects the half-life of different steroid esters. This is something that came up again just on drugs and stuff with Dave Crossland the other day. So I thought it would be really great to get back into this because I spent a lot of my competitive years bodybuilding not knowing, thinking that like, okay, I look on the websites and I see the half-life of testosterone cypionate is 10.5 days versus the half-life of Test-E is 7.6325 days or whatever. And I took that as gold, as the Bible. Scott, can you talk a little bit more about, first of all, about these half-lives and these records that we have online? Like this isn't necessarily the truth, is it?
Yeah, that's where to start. First of all, maybe it would be important to link to Steve's, maybe whichever ones he thinks are most important, Steve's videos on these topics, because he's got like at least a solid hour where he goes through each of the carrier oils, talks about solvents, he talks about C-reactive protein, the inflammatory effect that you can measure on yourself with using the sensitive CRP test. Great stuff. It's really, really good. And we didn't talk about that, but so
send me those, Steve, after we're done. I'll make sure that those are. I'll put those to make sure they're in the description so people can check those out.
I'll send the videos and the links, and they're in the sort of videos and the article that goes along with those videos. And there I have of all the pharmaceuticals which are available in the world, pharmaceutical grade that is, not the underground labs.
Yeah.
I index which carrier oils they contain.
Nice.
So basically all the pharmaceuticals, if they use sesame oil, olive oil, ethyl oleate, which people should avoid, arachids oil, which people should avoid, and so I index all of that. It took me a couple hours to put that together, but it's very valuable content because the carrier oil can cause inflammation, but it's also a little bit person dependent. So please give that a watch and a read because it will prevent cardiovascular disease for sure.
Yeah. So we've got a situation, just kind of stepping back to basics, is that when you've got an injectable esterified, let's just take testosterone enanthate, kind of your basic, typically TRT prescribed. You've got a carrier oil that's in there. You've got a solvent to help bring everything into solution. And that carrier oil can vary in viscosity. And castor oil is the one I think, Steve, you really dig. It can take a while to get that in there, but it's very, very thick. Yeah. And you can imagine then that once you've injected, let's say, a mil, you've got a depot there. It contains the carrier oil and it contains the test as an enanthate. So that's basically the steroid molecule. And there's this fatty acid chain on there. And I think I came up with some sort of analogy with like Velcro and animals while you're driving down the highway, something like that when I described this previously. And literally the length of that fatty acid chain is the primary determinant of how fast that esterified, in this case testosterone, is going to leave that depot, because it's kind of like an anchor. It's like stickiness. It's the length of the Velcro tail sticking to the other side of the Velcro in the depot where the carrier oil is.
Before it leaves.
Yeah, but that carrier oil also makes a difference. And that you can tell with castor oil because it stays for quite a while. It's like having a whole lot of Velcro so that testosterone can't free itself. It keeps on getting caught up, so to speak. So once, let's say that a molecule of testosterone enanthate has made its way into the this is one of the things you also brought up, Steve. I think it was one possible question. Made its way in the bloodstream. We've got at least one enzyme, 7-beta phosphodiesterase, that's in the liver that then cleaves away that Velcro tail, the enanthate, the fatty acid, and then you've got your free testosterone. which another topic is going to go and be bound to albumin, serum hormone binding globulin, or be free, a very small percentage, depending on which way you measure it. And then that would bind to the androgen receptor and do the things that we're hoping it would do. Or it could be brought into the cell with SHBG through the megalin receptor, and that's a whole other ball of wax. But basically, getting from what you inject to a free testosterone molecule is dependent upon the ester that's there. So enanthate or propionate or acetate, those latter two are faster because the carbon chain's shorter, less Velcro sticking it to the site. And then the ball of a Velcro at the depot depends on the carrier. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, it's because the length of the amount of carbon atoms, I believe, in the ester determines kind of how fast it can metabolize with the esterases. And the carrier oil, what you see is that when it has a higher dynamic viscosity rate, it means it's thicker, but it also means that it disperses through the muscle slower. So people think that when they inject a milliliter of testosterone enanthate, it remains a ball, but that's not the case. It disperses. And so that's why if you inject in the glute, which is a larger muscle, as this oil disperses, it creates a bigger surface area where the lipases, the enzymes that metabolize fat, can actually break this apart and turn it into little fat droplets. So you see with castor oil, if you suspend testosterone enanthate in there, the half-life actually increases to 33.9 days. And I believe that the 12-day half-life of testosterone enanthate was determined was a tea oil or peach oil.
Tea oil. I saw that study. Yeah, peach oil or tea oil. Yeah,
peach oil. Never heard of that one.
Something like that. Yep.
Yeah. One of the Moldova brands uses peach oil or tea oil.
And here's the thing that's important. So, Steve, you gave a very specific number there that refers back to that one particular study, and that's an average from that study. And here's the thing: that was a glute injection, right?
Yeah.
So you go to the delt, you've got a different size muscle, you've got different activity. And some of that simply could be, and here's the thing, like if we're just thinking like in terms of brute mechanical forces on that depot, and I'd love to see a study, this is an easy one. What happens if you inject and then you make sure you spend 2 minutes really dispersing that depot? You just change the surface area and everything. What if you inject and then you sit on your butt, literally, and don't do anything? You're in front of your computer for the next 2 hours versus you inject and then you go train. This is important too. Like if you've injected, and this is what a lot of people do, they'll inject in the muscle they're going to train, which I'm actually not entirely on board with, because there's a possibility, once you've got that there, especially if it's like castor oil and it's going to stay there, now you've got tremendous mechanical force. You've got basically kind of a foreign body in the muscle.
Sure, yeah. And
now you're putting under maximal tension the possibility that you're creating damage. So you do that again and again and again and again and again, and you see the common thing. You'll see guys who have either bumps in their delt, and that might be from something like Winstrol, which is a whole other scenario. But you also then find flattened delts oftentimes. And I wonder
if there's necrotic or non-functional.
Yeah, necrotic. There may be some nerve damage, but literally you're going in, you're traumatizing that muscle to some extent when you're training. That's kind of the purpose, is to really put it under massive load. And now it'd be sort of like, imagine you thinking about like the suspension on your car. If you go and just take a giant rock and stuck it underneath one of your leaf springs, just stuck it in between the leaves of your leaf spring. If anyone people knows what leaf spring, you'd have it's like you got a huge bump in there. Like it might lift the suspension more and create more tension in that one particular spot.
Yeah.
But the chances that you're going to damage and maybe excessively damage to the point of sort of semi-permanent or prolonged injury, or that, a dead spot, a necrotic spot, I think can go up. And especially if you've got something that's inflammatory, like you chose the wrong solvent, or you've got a synthetic oil in there, which is inflammatory, or like we had on Dave's, on the Drugs and Stuff show, the question that I popped in for a few days ago, Scott, was the guy was having problems. He was trying every combination of solvent and carrier oil and everything, and he was still getting incredible post-injection pain.
Yeah.
And so like for a guy like that to inject into a muscle that he then goes and trains could be diabolically bad for that muscle.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Do you think that, so with MCT oil is getting more popular with the underground labs or the home brewers because you don't need so
yeah.
much solvents because it has some solvent-like properties? Do you think that's a better oil for pre-workout administrations compared to the
Like
castor oil because
into the
it
muscle that you're
disperses
gonna.
so, yeah, in the
Yeah,
muscle that you're going to train, because it disperses so rapidly, right? The dynamic viscosity rating, somebody told me was 17. I couldn't find it myself, but
interesting. Yeah, well,
yeah.
I think is that derived from coconut oil usually?
Yeah, so so not the refractured McNally stuff, the 812 or 817 or 840, whatever the
Yeah,
number is. So that's refractioned coconut oil. This is like pure MCT that's just purified. I think there's
yeah.
USB grade on the market. I don't
So
homebrew, so
yeah,
I'm not exactly sure.
yeah. Well, the one thing about coconut oil that if you buy like Twin Labs, I don't know if you still make this. They're MCT oil, and you look at the
Hmm.
length of the esterified fatty acids in there. You've got the different links than if you look at coconut oil, which probably varies depending on the time of the year and the coconuts and everything else. But you have a lot of
Right.
laureate or lauric
Yeah.
acid, which I think is 6 carbons on it, not
Hmm.
so much octanoic acid, which is the one that has been most studied, I think, in terms of freely entering into the cell and being rapidly oxidized, more like a carbohydrate versus
Right.
fats typically are. So it depends on the MCT oil where they're getting it potentially as far as that effect. But the interesting thing about that question is if you're injecting into the muscle before you're training, you're trying to like increase this pump effect, this stretch effect. This is the
Hmm.
idea of site enhancement is that to some degree just having the chronic stretch there, just like in the
Right.
stretch overload models with quail and other pieces of evidence that point to stretch being important for muscle growth. You want that stretch there to some degree in the right
Hmm.
amount to turn on the hypertrophic process. That's why you did it. So if you inject water, let's say it's just water, go to one end of the spectrum, it's in and out. Maybe that's what you want. I don't know. Like where's the appropriate dose response? We've got too little, it made no difference, and then you've got
Hmm.
just enough extra stretch. Let's say it's in a weak muscle group you're trying to bring up. Then you have an additive stimulus that you somehow can't evoke because you don't have a good mind muscle connection or you're picking the wrong exercise or what have you.
Right.
And then you go too far, and maybe you're with castor
Structurally
oil,
impaired.
and then you're just blowing out the muscle, and you might get more muscle, you might get a bigger amount of tissue there, but it may be scar tissue.
Yeah, and we,
So
we have enough Olympians doing that already, I think. There's a couple of guys in
yeah,
the Olympia states that have massive delts, too massive
yeah,
to be legitimate. It's
yeah. Well,
but it's
there's
so
also
I think it's very funny to see that the pharmacodynamics change quite a bit depending on where you inject, which carrier
yeah.
oil you take, the injection volume, and then I think of course individual response, but I'm sure everybody's well aware of that. Um,
Well, it's huge though.
did
I mean,
you?
Steve, how much variability have you seen in your like clients that are on TRT in terms of what they need to stay in quote unquote optimal range? It's like 2 or 3 fold
It's all over
range.
the place. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all over the place. Yes, some people need 100 or 150, and some people need 300. And of course, the metabolism of the drugs. Some people metabolize drugs way faster than others.
yeah, yeah.
And then,
Dr.
yeah, do
Chrysler, who's passed, used to
yeah,
talk about rapid metabolizers. I heard back. I had
Hmm.
some clients that
hmm
work with him, and they're like, That's sort of a term. I think that's what he called it. But yeah,
yeah,
it's totally
hyper
different.
metabolizers, something like
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
do my next cycle. I'm gonna do 100% sub Q
No kidding.
because yeah,
yeah,
well, next cycle it's not going to be that much. So it's going to fluctuate between like 300 milligrams of test and primo total, and then 600. That's kind of where I draw the line nowadays. And I'm going to attempt to do that all sub Q. It's going to be pharmaceutical, Bayer testovirin, and Bayer rimabolin, and then do
uh-huh.
all of that sub Q to see if my serum levels change of testosterone and if the response is going to change. But I also don't want to do this repetitive glute shots anymore because I feel, there's so much scar tissue there now that it
Yeah.
radiates to my knees
Mm.
after
Oh,
10 years, 12 years. Yeah. And I have a deep tissue massage therapist, and after the last cycle, she was like, "You got to stop doing these glute injections because that's why your outer quads and your knees are starting to hurt now."
Oh
So
man, yeah.
yeah, I'm going through that scar tissue right now. It's just that's the only place that I inject. I never really did shoulders because you lose definition over time.
You
Right.
can repair it. It will get better with a break,
Yeah.
because I had the same thing, and that's just the worst when you're pushing the syringe in and you hear the crunches and the pops and you feel all that. But I found though that if you really give it a break for a long period of time in foam roll, and it sounds like you're doing some good stuff with deep tissue, give yourself like 6 months. I bet you'll be a lot better.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing now, and do the lacrosse ball.
Yeah,
I do that almost every day. So my upper glutes are not happy. And then after that, I'm just gonna stick to sub Q. Do it around the same area, and then hopefully prevent scar tissue buildup, so I can build my quads a little bit more, because I feel they start to suffer now due to the knee pain. And even though I'm avoiding all the inflammatory carrier oils for now 5-6 years, it's still creeping up on me. So no more intramuscular shots for me.
I wanted to hear more about that, the thought on inflammation from carrier oils. But before we did, I wanted to ask, because just to kind of refresh people, Scott, I mean, you were saying for some people, Test E was as short of a half-life as like 3 days previously when we talked about this.
Yeah, maybe I was looking at the figure we had. Or, it can be all over the place. The thing, I've got actually another question, follow-up question for Steve, and then kind of another comment that's sort of important. When you see these pharmacodynamic studies, the half-life studies, it's usually just the first injection. But we have potential upregulation of the phosphodiesterase, the enzymes that cleave that esterified fatty acid away, potentially, I don't know, over time. That's typically you expose the body to some sort of stimulus, it has an adaptation. So those
that's why we switch esters every month, right?
There you go. Yeah. Who knows? Like, that's the thing. Like, that was one of your questions, and it's to what extent. I think there's a study from like the 50s, in rabbits, I believe, looking at just sort of generalized esterases that cleave esterified steroid hormones, cortisone, testosterone, what have you. Mm-hmm. Who knows what variability we have there?
So you're saying we could get more efficient, like in just normal people language, you're saying we can get more efficient at breaking down the same ester after repeated exposure.
Sure, you've got that. You've got changes in SHBG. You've got changes in megalin. You've got this whole system from the injection all the way down to the different ways in which the testosterone could enter the cell and act on the androgen receptor, be aromatized, be conjugated, gluconorated, be metabolized by the liver. Like, all these things are changing in dynamic homeostasis at the same time. So, like, just going back to like the half-life calculators, those are cool. I mean, I dig the effort that people have gone into where they just sort of add them summarily and just presume that biologically everything's just the same. It's like, it's almost, and I don't say this in a disparaging way, but almost saying like, you know what? You went in and you did 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds and you're starting to get an effect. Just keep doing that. Like, there's no progressive overload. There's no reason to change it. Just keep on going and you'll be just fine. Yeah. No, the body adjusts to these things. So, but I think, Steve, with the sub-Q, just because you tend to have more solvents in like an enanth or a propionate or an acetate, are you going to go for like a Nebido or something like that because you're going sub-Q when you do your
No, I'm going with the testovirin in castor oil. That's about 20% benzyl benzoate. Yeah, and what is it, 2% to 3% benzo alcohol. And then do 0.5 milliliter shots and foam roll it a little bit. Disperse.
Okay.
See if that changes anything, just to prevent scar tissue buildup, and because I do think over decades that kind of builds up, and it doesn't really get that much better.
Yeah, I had a client who had been doing sub-Q for like a year, less than 2 years for sure. And he'd kind of bulked up a little bit, and then we started dieting him down, and he basically had caused some lipodystrophy there. It was all in he went in the same spot on his abs, and now he had like kind of a hole there, like, kind of like this disfigured spot that it kind of sucked. He probably could have gotten it liposuctioned away, but that's
yeah.
important.
I think my upper.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think sometimes people are like, well, I'm doing short act. I'm doing it like, every day sub-Q. So I'm going to use, and these preparations are meant for intramuscular injection, not for sub-Q. I haven't seen, maybe you pay closer attention to this, I think, than I do, but I haven't seen a sub-Q specific preparation. I don't even know if they're technically FDA approved for that. It's sort of an off-market, an off-script prescription that doctors will give, but so if you're saying I'm going to go with a test propionate or maybe even a test acetate, I think you can find with Underground, then you're looking at like probably potentially the wrong choice because those will inflame like a mad dog. So
yeah, I'm sure. Because metabolism is quite fake. So this is some of the self experimentation that I like to do to get to a higher truth.
Awesome.
And kind of find a better solution for bodybuilders. And if it fails, I'll make a video about it. Said, okay, don't do what I do.
Yeah,
it's not worth it. And then everybody will stick to intramuscular injections, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, Chrysler's got a video out there introducing this, and there's been several people. There's a good amount of research now looking at the sub-Q. It's like, I mean, you are brazenly going where no man has gone before to some degree.
No, I think John Jewett is doing exclusively sub-Q also.
Is he now?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I saw in one of his videos, and people were quick to point it out in the comment section. Steve, you're not the first.
Yeah,
John Jewett is already doing this.
Right.
Yeah, he's one of the good guys also. So we're about 5 weeks out for that experiment.
Nice.
I'll start again in June when the temperature comes down because now it's way too hot to be on cycle. It's way too hot.
You just stay inside with the air conditioner blowing on you when it's like this in Thailand?
Pretty much, yeah. But we train in the evening. Me and Aaron, a friend of mine who just moved here from China to Thailand. So we're training at 8 o'clock in the evening when the temperature cooled down a little bit and there's not too many people in the gym. We got a huge gym here, but it's without air conditioning. We only have a giant helicopter fan. Yeah, so you're sweating buckets. Like I bring a beach towel, and every time I soak through it, it's nasty, but it's good for the pores. Yeah, they say. So we'll start again when the temperature's down a little bit, and I don't get heat stroke every time because we do like to train hard. And Aaron is working his way up to 270 pounds again.
Nice.
So he definitely needs.
He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's big. Yeah, he's a big guy. Yeah. We did all the basic Dante Trudel and fortitude training. So we put. Sweet. I think we went from like 95 kilos to 125 in 3 years.
Nice.
He's built for this stuff. Yeah, he's built for it. Yeah.
Do you have training videos that people can check out?
Yeah, they're on my Instagram page. So we just got one of those the Steadicam gimbals. So we're gonna film every workout.
Oh, cool.
And then edit it nicely so people don't lose the attention span. Because like for you guys, you like to see a one full working set straight, right, from start to finish.
Absolutely.
And then you get more excited. Every rep closer to filling. Then you get another one. Is he going to get another one? But we have to be a little bit more of the editing for a broader audience. So we're going to make it super fancy and then do the most intense reps. Yeah.
That'll be cool. Thank you for tuning in to another podcast here at Think Big Bodybuilding Media. If we've provided value to you today, then please consider contributing to our show. You can help support the show through Patreon. Every $5 helps to pay for the software and the hardware and everything else that goes into making a podcast. You can also contribute by using our code at True Nutrition. True Nutrition has been our title sponsor for several years now. I'm super grateful for them. And I've believed in True Nutrition supplements long before they sponsored our programming. You could use our code THINK for health supplements and performance supplements. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions. And if you're in Canada, check out supplementsource.ca. They have free shipping over $99, huge discounts on overstocked, short-dated, and label-changed products. Plus, they have all your normal supplements too. Thank you guys for listening to the commercial. I hope you're having a great day and that your bodybuilding is going well. Let's get back to the show.
Social media nowadays.
Hey, before we moved on from this topic, I did want to hear more of your guys' thoughts on the inflammation factor related to this. I'll tell you, this is something I hadn't really thought about in the past, and I figured out for myself. I remember I had one particular lab that I had used. You know what it's like when you find gear that you know works good, that you know it's dosed well. Then there's no reason to like go shopping around and trying other places and risk not getting it or getting something that's not as good. So I stuck with this and I used it for years and years and years. I didn't connect this, but I started getting these stomach pains, and I think there were some other factors, but I started getting to the point where every time I took a shot, no matter what it was, I got this metallic taste, like that the Tren cough feeling. And it didn't matter what compound it was. I'd say 1 out of every 3 shots, I would get this. And toward the end of a contest prep, I was doing shots every day. So what I didn't figure was I would take a shot, and then I'd get that metallic taste, kind of a little bit of heartburn feeling, and then it would go away. But then 3 hours later, 4 hours later, I would be in agony, like literally like knives in my stomach. I didn't connect it because it was so long after. It wasn't until I was literally like 1 week out from the show, and I took a shot and I headed to the gym, got that metallic taste, got that weird heartburn feeling. And because I was just so lean and so depleted, that night, it literally, like, it took me out for 2 days. Like, I was on the couch in agony. And it was only in hindsight that I was able to realize, like, oh, this was directly connected to these shots that I'm taking. So I switched brands, and I found that with other brands, I haven't experienced this. Once in a while, I still will, but it's very rare now. And there had to be something really weird happening with inflammation in there, would be my guess. I don't know what it was, but I thought maybe I could get a little bit of more insight on this by listening to you guys talk about this.
Steve's guess is better than mine. Yeah. Well, you know the ins and outs. I mean, this can be about 10 things. You know, there's so many mistakes you can make, right?
And I'm not asking you necessarily to answer my question, but it's my way to set this up to say that I'm freaking interested to hear more about it.
Yeah. So I had exactly the same issue many years ago when I was running Indian supposedly pharmaceutical grade compounds. We're not going to mention brands, because those guys probably don't want this out there. But so here in Thailand, you can go to the pharmacy and from behind the counter on display, you can buy real pharmaceuticals. And some pharmacies in the back, they have Indian produced or Thai produced or Cambodian produced pharmaceuticals that look like pharmaceuticals, smell like pharmaceuticals, but are not registered true pharmaceuticals. So they come in ampules, beautiful packaging, serial codes, inserts, right? It looks legit. So you think, okay, this is high quality, accurately dosed, active pharmaceutical ingredient as mentioned on the label. So when you buy Test Probe, you actually get Test Probe. And when you buy Mastrone, you actually get Mastrone, not Test Probe.
Yeah.
Like so many undergone labs. Nice. And so it looks great, right? And you run these drugs, and then after the injection, like what Scott said, McNally said, you get like heartburn. You feel like a little bit of this supposedly test flu symptoms. You know, test flu, I'm sure people remember that. So you feel of it like an allergic response. Yeah. But you write it off as like, okay, that's test flu. It's part of the game. I have to see it through. And after a couple of years of doing that, and I would do my blood work every month or every 3 months, I check my C-reactive protein levels because I know that's important for inflammation and preventing cardiovascular disease later down the line. And my CRP levels would always be elevated on cycle and then come down. And first I thought maybe it's training intensity. So you go into the literature, you can't really find any conclusive evidence that, hypertrophy workouts or strenuous workout raises CRP levels that much. Right? I'm talking about high sensitivity CRP levels of 5, 10, 12, 15. I've seen it up as high as 50. 50. It's crazy high, right? That's 10 times out of the reference range. Yeah, so imagine seeing your cholesterol at 2,000, your total cholesterol.
Wow.
That would be a similar comparison, right? Because total cholesterol goes up to 200 milligrams per deciliter, and CRP up to 5 milligrams per liter. So 10 times higher. It's an insane amount.
Yeah.
So I would go on a cycle and it would be like 1, which is still too high. And then I switched to pharmaceutical grade and I didn't get that effect. So I wondered, maybe it's something to do with the oil. So you go into message boards and people understand that ethyl oleate, some people would get an allergic response. People have known about this for years. I think even Base Killer Online had it on that website, or for home brewing, one of the first. You guys remember that website, Base Killer Online?
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I learned how to make my tren from pellets.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So you get your Phenoplex and your coffee filter. Yeah. So even there, these guys knew that ethyl oleate was not a good carrier oil solvent to use. So I really started looking into the carrier oils, and I realized that ethyl oleate, propylene glycol, or polyethylene glycol, monoethylene glycol, glucol or glycol, however you pronounce it, migliol, are all highly inflammatory. And the problem is with these third world pharmaceuticals is that they never mention which carrier oil they use. So they say excipients QS, quantity sufficient. So I went through all of the products and did test injections. Yeah, don't worry about it, right? It's got tren in it. Yeah, that's all. That's what you want, right? It's easy to inject. So the good thing about all these synthetic solvents is that the product is very easy to inject. So and I understand from so it's like water. You inject it, then it goes in smooth, right? Not like castor oil. We sit there, hammering on the plunger, and it still takes 3 minutes. You need a bench clamp, to get it in. You have to run into the wall, So I would check everything and then do a test shot of test annotates, check my CRP markers, come off, wait my CRP to come down, and test another brand. So I realized that all of it is just garbage. All of it. And I would tell people, the easiest way to test it is just take a little bit of oil and wipe the ink off a syringe. If that's possible, then your product probably contains a lot of the synthetic carrier oil, but you can also do that with MCT oil, so it doesn't exactly hold up. And then arachids oil, which is refined peanut oil, that's part of cysteine and decadurabolin, that is also highly inflammatory in some people. They can test flu symptoms or feel a bit hot, or their CRP levels go sky high. Doesn't happen in everybody, it seems. But that doesn't rub the oil of the ink off a syringe if you use a little bit of the oil and try that. So it's very difficult to determine which oils are good and which are not good. That's why I tell most people that either home brew with MCT if you know how to, or cottonseed or grapeseed or sesame oil. Those are all not inflammatory and dissolve raws pretty steadily. Or stick with pharmaceutical grade, and then you run into the issue that pharmaceuticals are often counterfeited. So it's a bit of a shit show if you don't want the information.
The paint thinner test, maybe you could call that.
Yeah,
is it
exactly.
A paint thinner, and it's interesting. Yeah. Like who thinks chocolate is good, right? I mean, almost everyone thinks. Well, I'm allergic to chocolate, actually. Chocolate doesn't work for me.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. I can have. I was deathly allergic to, could really fuck me up when I was a kid. I'm much better with it now.
Man.
Yeah, and the same thing goes just with with allergies in general, and with our sensitivities to different chemicals in so many different ways. The thing I wonder, and this is for those who are thinking I'm 22 and I'm indestructible. I can just do this, whatever. I'm just going to just pound, just more tren. Who cares? I really have, and this is a very sort of generalized thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Steve, because you looked at inflammation, I think, a good bit. Is that one of the things you got sort of a hormetic curve with gear use? Like you get, there's a dose response, more is better to some degree, and what determines when that curve starts downshifting towards more is not better is the amount of toxicity someone experiences. Yeah. And it could very well be that some people just have great resilience to toxicity, or maybe they're trying to use just normal amounts, or not off the chart amounts. You could still classify it as abuse if it's anything above replacement. But they're not like oh god, this guy's not on a Boston Lloyd of old days level type of thing, but instead they're using normal amounts, but the toxicity they're getting and inflammation, and maybe they're having sort of subclinical GI issues that are disturbing it. All those things that are compiling is because of the carrier oil that they're using. Or the solvent. It could be the worst combination of both, and they've got toxic stuff, and they can't get the effectiveness out of the active ingredient because it's loaded. It's a shit sandwich. It's like the bread would be good, but it's a shit sandwich. It's not going to work for you. You know, not
No,
the best
it's very
choice of
true.
carbs for a carb load, right?
Yeah. No, it's very true. So, right, of course, the drugs that we take has some level of toxicity, and like you said, it's dose dependent. But you get the additional burden of the carrier oil, and of course, some people are allergic to benzyl benzoate or benzyl alcohol. That's why I've done a couple consultations in the past where people they homebrew and they ask me for a formula, and I told them, so, well, maybe you can do it in MCT exclusively, or maybe 1% benzyl alcohol. You stay hydrated because it gets detoxified through the kidneys. So you make sure that you don't do your injection right upon waking where you're slightly dehydrated. You make sure that you get 2 liters of water in, then do your injection, and then, hopefully you can detoxify some of this benzyl alcohol that you're allergic to, and the rest is MCT. And then you might have to dissolve maybe 50 milligrams per milliliter, if that's the highest concentration it can hold without falling out of solution. But I think foods can potentiate some toxicity, insane amounts of supplements, and then the carrier oil. And I think if you mitigate all of that, you can stay a lot healthier, which we all know what's going to happen. We have a margin now to increase the drugs in. And then instead of running a gram of gear, now we're healthier on 1.2 grams of gear because we took the carrier oil out.
Right.
Yeah. But so over the last 5 years that I've been actively trying to share this information, I've gotten so many messages of people that changed their products to either reputable underground labs, where they just mention, hey, this is cottonseed. We don't use ethyl oleate secretly. This is a cottonseed or grapeseed, a little bit of benzyl benzoate, and a little bit of benzyl alcohol, and the rest is low concentration active pharmaceutical ingredient. And they changed that to something from the shit underground labs or the shit third world pharmaceuticals with these toxic synthetic carrier oils. They switch, and within a week they feel better. They feel amazing, and their white blood cells improve, right? Or their neutrophil too. That improves because they don't get this inflammatory response from the oil. Their ferritin levels come down because they don't get high ferritin secretion from the liver because the liver is no longer inflamed. Their acid reflux goes down.
Acne.
Their skin improves. Yeah, the acne improves. It's magic, and that's why I'm always hard on Bayer, because they use the best carrier oil ever, and nobody gets issues with that.
Sponsored to you by Bayer.
Use
use code Vigorous the next time you buy your Primobolan.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I have Bayer stock. I no longer have Pfizer stock, but I still have Bayer stock.
Oh, good call.
Full disclosure. Yeah.
All right.
I sold those a while
give you
back.
1,000 followers right there.
Yeah. Buy Bayer if you want inflammation. You want some Bayer stock or some Pfizer stock. Yeah, if you want myocarditis, Pfizer stock is the way to go.
You may have to cut that out later, Scott. That would make it.
Steve's trying to sabotage our channel. He came in here to get us blocked.
I see you guys as direct competition.
Yeah.
but like a sort of a very sort of anecdotal observation that I've seen mentioned for years, and I'm not sure if I can. It's that a lot of times the guys who can get the biggest, just in a very general way, are the guys who seem to be able to handle the most stuff, so to speak. And some of that can just be the genetics of remaining less toxic. So that they can have a better balance of higher amounts. And this is, don't take this connection too directly, but it's sort of akin to what we talked about when Brandon Curry was on the show. And when him being over there at Oxygen, where like literally they throw everybody in to this like high volume, like just for most people, over the top training regime. And if you have the genetics to respond to that, the greater the stimulus, the greater the adaptation you can evoke, as long as it's not too much. So people come and go there because they may have the possibility of being a better and bigger bodybuilder with a lesser stimulus because that's optimal for them.
Yeah.
But over there, they're talking about the cream of the crop who can handle the most extensive stimulus and still adapt from it. And it may be that some of the folks out there, of course, although I think if you look at the psychological literature, the average person grades themselves being above average. Like on average, most people think they're better than average, so that can't really mathematically be the case. But the average person listening here has average genetics, potentially, at least amongst the listeners. And it may be that ramping down, if there are some toxicity issues, obviously you want to eliminate those first and foremost, but making a switch like that might make sense. Dig in on these things and see, oh shit, like we've got, fractionated peanut oil as a carrier oil in there, or we've got, ethyl oleate or guaiacol. Like you could have a combination of guaiacol, ethyl oleate, and, who knows what, that could just be like the toxic catastrophe for someone where like just taking that out could mean, and with no increase in dose, nothing, just simply removing that toxicity, which is like putting the brakes on your growth, could make the difference. Have you seen that, Steve? Like in terms of the side effects, we know, but does the growth then get accelerated?
So you'll see that with Aaron, for example. So so you see with Aaron. Aaron just was in China and he didn't have so much. Am I still?
You're good.
Is my internet okay?
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll continue. So Aaron just moved here a week ago, and in China he didn't have access to high quality product, but he was still able to get within his second competition up to like 105 kilos on stage, reasonably lean. Right, for a second competition, he was in good shape. He comes here with my connections, switching from dubious pharmaceuticals from China to pharmaceutical grade exclusively. So now we have a perfect example of what's going to happen. So he's going to pick back up and he's going to make significant progress. Of course, people will still have to stay tuned and wait a couple more months for that to happen. But I'm sure his blood work will be significantly better. And he's a good responder, so he doesn't need much. And the funny thing is, like the dosages he was running back then in the products he was using in China would not ruin his blood work that much. But I've seen blood work of people that ran more or lower dosages and their blood work would be ruined on the same products. So it wasn't the best products that he had access to. And some people just metabolize it poorly, but he was still quite resilient to it. And maybe it's because he's only been exposed to pharmaceuticals for 2 years and had good guidance from the beginning. But I think now that he's going to make the switch to pharmaceutical grade only, he's going to make significant improvements. Yeah, significant.
Yeah, this is cool. Yeah, now I'm definitely going to try to follow along. It'd be cool to post.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
you're welcome to join in.
Yeah, you need to I was just thinking, you need to have Camp Vigorous, where you rent a big house and you bring people over and let them partake of the better marketplace that you have there. Because there's advantages. Like this is why this is probably in part one of our thoughts today was like, why are you in Thailand? And you've already made a good case for it, man.
Nice segue, Scott. That was good.
It's a good place to be, for a bodybuilder, if that's your focus.
Yeah. Besides the heat and the mosquito that just entered the chat, it's a great place to be. So the reason why I came here, I think when I was 23, a friend of mine invited me. He just said, it's fun here, come over. And I was due for a holiday. So I came. And then, Holland is quite restrictive, taxes wise and, freedom wise. And that was what we're talking about. That's 15 years ago. So it's even worse now, probably. Never been back in a while. So I'm assuming it's worse. I'll ask Wesley Vissers. He's coming on a podcast next week. So I'll run it past him. And so I felt so much more of myself here in Thailand compared to back home. Bodybuilding is actually appreciated here. The bodybuilding community is huge. There's a national team and people really go for it. And, you walk on the street and people have a positive response to bodybuilders. Whereas in Holland, I always felt that they had a little bit of a negative and condescending response. So I moved here and now I can just live and do whatever I want.
That's cool.
Pretty much.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Are you considered a giant there? Just because you're, but
I'm not,
you're a star.
I went to Dubai and Kuwait, and then you walk in there and you're the smallest guy, obviously. So I'm not that big. I'm not that much of a big guy, but here in Thailand, you're big. But there's some genetic freaks out here, right? There's some really big Thai guys that are 260, 270 pounds, but they're just tall.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like 5'6". No, they're huge and really hard and dense. And yeah, so it's really motivating to train here. And a lot of foreigners, they moved here to Bangkok or Pattaya or Phuket, somewhere there. And there's a huge bodybuilding community here. We're all kind of kicking back and enjoying their chicken, brown rice, and broccoli dinners and go to the pharmacy and get what they need. But again, like the pharmaceuticals here, you really have to be super careful what you purchase because a lot of the underground labs, or actually most of it, in my opinion, is just pure garbage.
No kidding.
Due to the oils. Yeah, just purely due to the oil. So it's accurately dosed. It's the active pharmaceutical ingredient. There's no contaminants. There's no risk for infection. 1 milliliter vials contain 1 milliliter, not 0.7. Right, or the ampules. Right, and 10 milliliter vials contain 10 milliliters, not 9. So that's all legit. But then the oil is garbage. Probably because they ship from India to Thailand and then distribute all over the world. And if it ends up in Canada or Denmark where it's cold, they don't want it to crash. So I do understand from a production perspective that they don't want their product to crash when they ship it everywhere. But from a consumer perspective, it's over time it's kind of deadly to use those products. Yeah.
Have you done a cost analysis? I mean, this might be tough information to get from the manufacturer side, but I mean, is it really worth it from a cost perspective to use the crappy carrier oils, the toxic ones?
No, it can be. Yeah. It can be, because they're already doing the ampules and the blister strips and the packaging with serial codes and unique numbers and the QR codes. I mean, they put a lot of effort into it. You really got to commend them. Some of these third world Indian pharmaceuticals, they put in the effort. Yeah. I think it's just purely they use these synthetic oils just for a distribution method. And they could easily make it with MCT and maybe cottonseed. Chase Irons is still watching, so I think he's a homebrew master. Maybe those guys can hire Chase for a consultation. Yeah. And just have him on duty in India for a while, all expenses paid, first class flight, staying in a nice 5-star hotel with good service, bring his wife, bring the dog, and then have him go over. Honestly, dude, you deserve it. And everybody in the world would literally be at your feet because you prevented cardiovascular disease. If you can make it happen.
Saving the bodybuilders.
Saving the bodybuilding community. So until Chase Irons to get that sorted, stay clear of Indian
coming
and
soon,
Thai
type. Ball will be available on the shelf worldwide.
Yeah. Exactly.
The back shelf where you buy one, get 10 free. Like, it's not suspect at all.
But that's a promotional only for the top level educators. It's a promotional bulk discount. Yeah,
there you go.
I'd run it for sure. Anything from Chase. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Right on. So Thailand, the life is fun, but it's probably more expensive than living in the Western world because you have to import. Yeah, because like all the pharmaceuticals are a little bit more expensive because they are imported, not produced locally, and then high quality fish and high quality chicken and beef. Ideally, you get it imported or export quality.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. I would have figured it was all I would have figured it was all like very fresh foods. Like I know that some places, even like when I was in Mexico, the local foods were all like super clean and super cheap. But you guys don't have like. I would have figured that there would be like local fish markets where everything was just pulled straight out of the ocean and it was good quality, stuff like that, and cheap. But that not so cheap, huh?
Yeah, you can get cheap and good quality, but when you want to bodybuild, you also want to make sure that everything is super sanitary and high quality and doesn't contain any extra complementary lead or mercury or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you're right. You spend a little bit extra. So I spend a fortune here, but it's probably also because you become more health conscious as you get older.
Yeah.
And I just want the highest quality of everything. The best gym and the best pharmaceuticals and the best food. So best wife and best house. and
Right.
all of that just costs a little bit more effort to get done. But you can live here very, very cheaply if you want to. You know, you can get $130 condominium furnished with a bed.
This is what I've
Yeah,
heard. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Right. Of course, you'll have $130 a month neighbors, but
Yeah.
you know, if you have some earplugs, you can sleep. You know,
Right.
and you can. Like I went with Aaron to 7-Eleven at like 2 o'clock in the morning because we were hungry, and then you get minute rice, 2 servings, and chicken breast, and cooked eggs, and some kimchi, and some sauce, and some steamed vegetables. So you can micromanage meals like this at 7-Eleven
Yeah.
for $3, $4, $5 in total. You get your protein, your carbs, your vegetables, and so you can throw in some almonds, you know, roasted in rice bran oil. So you can get, you know, everything. There's meal prep services. Again, there's great gyms in most city, you know, warehouse gyms. Most of them no air conditioning.
Would you, quick before we leave the 7-Eleven, would you say that's healthier than the hot dogs on the roller and a pretzel? You know, that you typically get at the American 7-Eleven?
If you have a death wish, I think that's pretty equal.
Oh man,
the trick here is not.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, the trick here is not to read the packaging. So it says chicken, and that's where you stop.
Yeah.
I think if I turned it around and I would see like E numbers, you know, emulsifier and you know, whatever starch they put in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I do have two questions for you because this is so fascinating to me because you're making me want to. If I can get my dogs over, you make me want to move.
Yeah, come over.
I can
set you up.
Speak the language.
I speak a decent amount of Thai. Yeah, it's difficult. Okay. It's difficult to learn. Yeah, but you don't have to because most of the people that you hang out with are foreigners. And I coached many Thai bodybuilders over the last 10, 15 years that I've been here, but most of them speak good English also. And you know, the Thai bodybuilders that don't speak English, again, like we said at the start of this podcast, right? If you want to learn, you have to speak English. Right? That's where all the information is. So many of them, they learned English by themselves because they knew that the information in Thailand was not sufficient. They'd rather have a foreign coach, or they get a bad experience with a Thai coach that is still, you know, a little bit behind on the information. So most people speak good English here. And if you do speak Thai, the only benefit that you have is ordering food. Right? When you go to a restaurant, when you go to a restaurant where they don't really speak English. That's the only benefit. Or
imagine the level of desire one would have to be good at bodybuilding. Like in the US, we can just take it for granted. You just click a button on YouTube and you watch this video and Steve tells you how to do it. Imagine if before you even figured any of that out, you first had to learn a new language. Like that says a lot about how much somebody really wants to learn something if they're willing to learn a language in order to get the education they need.
And they're all over Asia, Southeast Asia. You see people like in Macau, you know, they speak Chinese, Cantonese, and or what is it, Mandarin? I'm not sure. Yeah. And they just purposely go to school to learn English to get the information because the local information is not sufficient for them to get to the highest level. I've had clients in Bhutan, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, you know, with perfect English, but they had to learn it for bodybuilding. Actually, one of my former clients signed up with Andrew Barry.
Oh, nice.
And he speaks perfect English. Yeah, he's from Vietnam, and he speaks perfect English. And he's a hard worker, and so you really see that the guys that excel in English, they also excel in their bodybuilding, you know, aspirations and their journey. So and they usually do quite well.
People willing to work for it, like really willing to work, learn a new language. It's a lot, man.
No, you have to. Yeah, you have to because that's why a lot of bodybuilders move to the States, right? So they can be right in the action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the question I had that's kind of related to that is, and this is what I did when I was in Arizona, and I'd like to do this now where I am here in Florida, is I wondered if you could make a connection with like the actual person who's selling the fish at the market. I did this with a rancher back in Arizona, and I knew like he was using these Africanized cows, and I could get and they ate the jojoba bean that grows there locally, and which is rich in some really high quality fats, and the beef was awesome. And he wasn't certified organic, but I knew what he was doing because we had conversations all the time. I wondered if maybe that would be the way to go, and then you get a big freezer, you know, and I would buy like 100 pounds of beef from him at a time. Yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah, that's what I do. So I
Okay.
have a wholesale
Okay.
distributor where
Oh,
they
sweet.
supply to the restaurants, right? The high class restaurants, and I just buy maybe $500 worth of groceries at a time. They deliver it, and I put it in my chest freezer.
Nice.
So
Okay.
yeah, I have the water delivered, and because you can't drink the tap water here, and I don't really trust even the most expensive reverse osmosis machines, so I get the water delivered, and man, we get everything delivered now. My wife is great at shopping online, so right, so I can get like here you don't do half cows, you don't because the local cows are not really that the beef is not really good quality, but I can get half a cow from New Zealand and it's all packaged up from the distributor, and I can get 20 kilos of salmon from Norway and Atlantic salmon that's wild caught. And again, you pay an arm and a leg for it. But with the rice, I could get it from a distributor also. I can order 50 kilos of rice if I want to, and it comes in a in a pallet. And then
50
so
kilos.
that's the best way to do it. Yeah, you can easily
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, because we go through so much food, as
Yeah.
bodybuilders. So you just get everything wholesale. Then why go to the grocery store when you can get it delivered?
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the time you can do cardio
Yeah.
or relax, take naps.
And the thing is like this is a model you sort of you because of your orientation towards health and
Mhm.
knowing what is out there in the marketplace. This is the strategy you've taken, but you can do the same thing in the U.S. We just don't typically because there's stuff everywhere. You can get
Yeah.
stuff so easily, but you
Yeah.
could we have Costco even Costco and Sam's Club and places like that. But you can go. I did that when I was in grad school in Georgia. Actually, I would go directly to the distributor and I would buy 20-pound bags of chicken, and I was actually like the chicken dealer for my department. I would bring people frozen bags of chicken
Right.
breasts. It was like $1 a pound. It was nothing,
Exactly. You save
But
so much money that way.
you
You can
do.
save so much money. Yeah. Yeah, so that's usually what I've always done, and you can do it in many different countries. Some of the grocery stores, they also have like a minimum order. So if you order for $200 or $300, they would just deliver it to your house if they have a delivery service. The downside of that is that they will just grab whatever's in the aisle.
Yeah.
So if you want a nice piece of beef, you actually still have to go there and kind of cherry pick, what you want, because you get the 10% beef instead of the 5% that you want.
Right.
Just as an example. So but you can live here very conveniently, and if you have a girlfriend or an assistant, a lot of guys, they contact me now for an assistant, so I hook them up, and then I said, this girl is still available, or this guy can help you out. You rent them for $300 a month, and they'll just do everything for you. Order the
Wow.
foods and help you with with all the little things that you need, and then you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, last 5 minutes crew checking in. Are we at the last 5 minutes already?
We're getting there. Yeah.
We're getting there. Oh no. So it's it's a very convenient place to live, but the country really opens up if you have a solid and good girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever the preference is, or a couple good buddies that have been here for a while. Like Aaron as me has this solid connection, and then whatever he needs, I delegate it to my wife, and she'll take care of it. It opens the country tremendously that way.
That's so
Do you
cool.
have a plate guy for the gym to unload like Dennis
I
James
can,
used to have
yeah.
back in the day?
I can hire one. Yeah, if I wanted to, I can get a plate guy, just like
Yeah.
Dennis James. It
Yeah.
would save a lot of. I think we'll do that actually when Aaron is going into prep. I'll just hire a plate guy, just to show up, and it will probably cost like $10 a session,
Yeah.
maybe less.
It'd be so
If I
worth
make
it.
it a full time.
But you're losing out on the neat though of racking and unracking the plate.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And that's half the fun, dragging all the plates from one leg press to the other leg press.
Part of the workout. That's where you burn the fat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of the workout. Yeah. Yeah, you keep your heart rate elevated, you turn into a high intensity workout.
I mean, I think you were on you were, Scott, on a podcast with John, of course, where he mentioned, Andrew asked him about his strategy of during prep, like doing a lap around the gym. between
Oh yeah,
sets.
yeah.
Increases neat.
What I
Like,
do.
you don't want to take.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, not on leg day though, but in the other workouts, you just walk around in the gym in between sets, and you keep your heart rate elevated, and you get a little bit of fat loss in there, and Maybe during the deep off season, it's kind of counterproductive, especially if you have legs that need to be brought up. But I think during, dieting, it's standing desk and, so you're on your feet all day and walking in between sets. I think that could shave an hour of cardio off the day. Whereas during cardio, a lot of guys would slowly disappear their legs.
Plus, not to mention, like you got to lose 10 pounds because you're coming right into that show. You're in those Thailand gyms without any air conditioning. You're just, cut 2 laps and you're down 7 pounds already from the water loss.
Easily. A lot of guys, they come here and they sweat so much and they lose so much electrolytes, they start cramping. So we actually have salt. Yeah, we have salt behind the counter. Because a lot of people, they just lose electrolytes like crazy, and especially during summer. If you go to the gym now at 1 p.m., you'll get heat stroke.
Like what are we talking temperature wise?
Well, I'll have to calculate it real quick. So today was Celsius to Fahrenheit. So it was 38 Celsius today. So it was 100.4.
Oh God, and that's like probably really humid too, like jungle 104.
Yes, 75 to 85%.
Holy shit! Yeah, I would die. I would die there.
It's not, but you get used to it after a while.
Yeah.
You get used to it after a while.
It's like that here in Florida. I like to train like out, outside when I can. I actually like that because it kind of pisses me off a little bit sometimes that it's so hot, and it helps with training. It's like it makes it harder,
It makes you ornery.
It makes the weights, the heavy weights, like you're kind of gassed sooner because you really need to radiate all your heat away. Yeah. But it also makes it easier to warm up. So if you got some body parts that are kind of achy, like sore knees and elbows, and it catches up with all of us, right? Then it makes warming up a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So there's something, and it's a more friendly environment. Women wear less, so that helps. In the gym, so that's in between sets when you're walking around, it's hey, it's makes it a lot more tolerable.
Women train pretty hard over there too. I remember Lyle McDonald when he was on that Rampage talking about reps in reserve, and he had some video clips that were submitted to him. I think there were 2 women from Thailand that he. Oh, really? I think he was doing like a velocity analysis, rep tempo, and and sort of you can use that as a surrogate for how close you are to failure. Yeah. So obviously, as fatigue encroaches into the set, the reps should be slowing because the muscle's fatigued, right? Right. And there were a couple women in Thailand, I think, if I remember this correctly, that they basically took, I think they even were doing like drop sets and stuff. They're training like maniacs. So is it a kind of a hardcore men and women there? Yeah. So
the fitness industry has exploded over the last 10 years. Like before, there was only one gym. Basically, you had Universe Gym, the old Dennis James gym, and then Power Zone after that. And now there are hundreds of gyms. So it's really getting popular and popular and popular. But the women, they train insane also because they see the bodybuilders train insane. So that's what they do. So my wife trained like a maniac. Yeah, she trained like a maniac when I met her. And then I showed her a little bit more about progressive overload and structuring your workout. And then she started competing and basically won everything. Up to the world championships level. Yeah. So a lot of women train hard. We have power lifters and figure and bodybuilder girls, and the Mr. Thailand is full with female classes. So it's really popular over here. Yeah. Yeah. That's why the bodybuilding community here is so great. People are quite close. And the bodybuilding community is usually quite close, especially the local gyms. Yeah, so that's, and a lot of buffet places, so everybody goes out to eat. And,
nice.
Yeah, goes to bulk every Saturday.
I see the gears turning, Scott. I see the gears. Oh, yeah. You just bought a house. You just moved. Are you gonna
rent it out?
I'm checking out the space. I know.
Airbnb it.
Oh yeah, that's the first thing I do when I look for an Airbnb. I look for a gym and hopefully a sushi buffet.
So you got a lot of that here. Yeah. This is of all the countries that I've been to, and I haven't been to the States yet, but maybe this year or next year.
Oh, totally.
I should. Hopefully around the Olympia, that would be fucking cool.
Nice.
So of all the places that I've been to, Europe I've been all over, Asia I've been all over, and then Dubai and Kuwait. I think this is top 3, top 4 of the most bodybuilder friendly country on the planet.
Wow.
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
That's cool.
all things considering, like UK is great, but it's cold, and you can get everything you need there. Great gym, great bodybuilder communities, but it's still cold.
Yeah.
So I would rather be here. Yeah, and Dubai is hot too. Dubai is also a great country. Have you been there?
I have not. No.
Nor have I. No.
You guys could do seminars there for days.
I know this is what a connection. I'm actually going over to the UK. I'm not going to drop any names just in case, this is going to work out. But the person who I'm in contact with over there also has some connections in Dubai. So I've heard that would just be amazing. But I do have a story, and I wondered if maybe this isn't the case anymore. This is from years ago. There was and he's passed on now, a bodybuilder, just a wonderful human being, but a friggin' like over the top maniac as far as a bodybuilder. This guy was extreme in every regard. Justin Rice, he was from New Zealand, big dude, used to do 405-pound behind the neck presses for like 10 reps. Wow. Back in Ronnie's heyday, he sent me a picture once of him standing next to Ronnie when Ronnie was 320, and they're the same size. Like he's Marcus Rule, Ronnie Coleman size. He's a big dude. And he was in Thailand for a while. He's one of those like just happy-go-lucky guys that just really didn't pay attention to the legal nature of things around him. So he just kind of did whatever he wanted, and he got in trouble a bit. Spent some time in prison, but he wasn't like this hardened like prisoner. But he was in Thailand, and he said what happened. This is maybe when they just had a couple gyms. Is he would go to the buffets with whoever's training partner was about an equal sized guy, and eventually they knew like they're just losing money every time he walks in the door. And what they would do is they'd walk in, and the restaurant owners basically were like, it behooves us just to give them a free plate and then send them on their way. So he would go to one restaurant and he'd get one plate free, and then they say, okay, now you go now. And then they go to the next place, and they just like restaurant hop, and they didn't have to pay for anything because they wouldn't let them stay and pay because they would eat, 8 plates of food.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had this picture in my head of Thailand like that.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean the Thais are very kind, and they're not very confrontational, so they'll find a way to say, hey, that's enough. Please, you're bankrupting us.
Yeah.
But I could totally see that happening, because I've been to the hotel buffet of the Marriott a couple times, and we go a group of people, 12, all bodybuilders, all over 225 pounds. And of course, you go there starving. Yeah. And you take your berberine before, and some guys would take some Humalog, a little Humalog in the bathroom. And then, you go there and you just keep eating and eating and eating, and then the staff would come and say, you guys are, pushing what we could consider to be normal for a buffet. Yeah, and this is a 5-star hotel buffet, So, usually they're kind of nice about it, but just like most countries, you don't push the boundaries too much because then you get in trouble.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's a great place. Yeah, it's a great place. There's the bodybuilding community is very, very good. Besides one. Well, let's not go there. But everybody else besides that guy is it's great, man. It's a good place. So if you ever want to come, let me know. Both Scots are always warm welcome, and I'll make sure you get the limousine and the red carpet treatment because I know a couple places where it's very, very bodybuilder friendly.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I want to see you do it, Scott. That way I can live vicariously through you. I don't think I'm going anywhere for the next year until Victoria's situated and settled. So you go and I'll watch.
You need another honeymoon, like a proper honeymoon, like a 5-star hotel honeymoon on the beach.
Ooh.
And then just you, and then I can be your best man. If you can bring your family in, I'll find Aaron too. He can be your, your bellboy. To help you carry all the heavy stuff. Yeah. I'll find some friends for you. And then we have a huge party.
It's a tax write-off, Scott. Like literally, it's a business trip.
Yeah. Well, you're giving me some ideas. You're giving me some ideas. All right. Well,
let's just set up with some banking too.
Let's wrap. Oh yeah. We need to do that. Let's talk off the air. And with that note, man, I appreciate you guys both taking the time to come and hang out here. Steve, we're going to have links, obviously, for everything. We had some stuff that we talked about earlier. Guys, I'll have that link down below. And of course, go to visit Vigorous Steve. Go to, we mentioned too, the Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach, BYOBBcoach.com. You can reach out to find Scott's book there, as well as the Fortitude Training Guide. Fortitude Training is like $20. So if you haven't even looked at it, then just freaking buy it, just so you can look at it, figure it out for yourself. And of course, check out our great sponsors. Go to TrueNutrition.com, use our code THINK. Right here, True Nutrition. And check out supplementsource.ca for everybody in Canada. Get yourself some ephedrine, a bunch of other stuff over there. Guys, this has been a pleasure. And as I can see from our live feed, we've had a lot of people that were excited to see this collaboration. So thank you.
Yeah. This was awesome. Thanks so much, both Scotts. Finally, I got on Muscle Minds.
Arrived.
Yes.
See you guys.
Much appreciated. Take care.